Officer James Carter walked away laughing, his boots clicking on cracked pavement. The homeless man hadn't even flinched. All he'd done was ask for directions. The laughter stung worse than any insult. But in that moment, something in James's gut twisted. The man's eyes held a sorrow that spoke of kingdoms lost and battles fought. James didn't know it yet, but this encounter would shatter everything he believed about authority, power, and humanity. Officer James Carter had been on the police force nearly a decade. Tall, well-built, freshly pressed uniform, he commanded respect simply by standing on a street corner. He believed in law and order, in hard justice, in keeping the streets clean. Born and raised in a middle-class suburban neighborhood, James had never gone hungry or cold. He had, in fact, helped put those who had on the streets. Meanwhile, on the cracked concrete sidewalks of Eastwood, a worn man with a gentle voice and sad eyes pressed on. He'd been sleeping in doorways, eating out of trash cans, and begging for change for years, ever since the recession swallowed his small landscaping business and fracturing his family. He'd worked hard all his life, was polite, respectful, never asked for much. He was the kind of man who stood quietly when passers-by pushed him aside, same man who, moments ago, had done nothing more than ask James for help. What James didn't know was that this quiet homeless man wasn't just another statistic. He was someone who once held the highest seat in the police department. It was a crisp autumn afternoon. Leaves had turned shades of orange and gold, the sky a muted grey. James stood beside his patrol car at the intersection near Eastwood Station. A couple of kids skateboarded on the sidewalk, a hot dog cart sizzled on the corner, a mangy dog limped along. A few feet behind him, the homeless man shuffled forward. His overcoat was stained, one glove's missing, and he held a torn pamphlet, clearly meant to be a resume. He addressed the cop. "Excuse me, officer, can you tell me where the job center is?" James, polite but unconcerned, glanced at the pamphlet and at the battered coat. "Down the block, but you'd better hustle," he said, shaking off his official smile. Then he turned around to leave. The man's low voice echoed in James's ears. "It's hard to hustle when the world hustles you." Something primal and uneasy stirred in James, but he shrugged it off and walked away. A few moments later, seeing the man in the distance, he couldn't resist letting out a chuckle. "That's not exactly how you talk yourself into a job." James laughed, shrugging his shoulders. "A man should know his place," he joked, louder than he intended. The homeless man turned, met James's gaze, and the cop saw something. A flicker of recognition. But he blinked, and it was gone. The man slowly turned away. That night, James couldn't sleep. He lay in his small apartment, city lights glimmering through the window, and replayed the encounter. Why had he laughed? Why had he brushed the man off so quickly? He felt a tug. He realized he didn't see the man's humanity. He saw a homeless face, assumed a life eaten by addiction, laziness, bad choices. He saw a number on a tally board marking displacement, not a name or a story. James had always believed in his mission, keep the city safe by enforcing laws, removing loiterers, pushing them off sidewalks. He wore his badge like armor. But now, in the dark of his room, the laughter echoed cheap, hollow. He thought of his own father, a retired cop who spent his career mentoring struggling youth. A man who told him, "First serve the people, son, not the paycheck." James flicked his light on and reached for his phone. He opened Google Maps and typed in Eastwood Job Center, then hesitated. Something made him zip up his hoodie, grab his badge, and head out into the cool night. Eastwood was quiet at this hour. Dim street lamps flickered as James wandered down about 3 blocks to the community center. He passed overgrown lots and boarded up storefronts. Around the back door, the homeless man sat cross-legged against the wall, head bent forward. James approached slowly. "Hey," he said softly. "You still here?" The man looked up, the lines on his face deeper in the yellow lamp glow. James offered a faint apology. "Listen, The man smiled gently with surprising warmth. "No harm, officer." He rubbed his fingertips together. "It's okay." They stood there awkwardly. Then the man cleared his throat. "My name's Gregory Carter." That name, James's heart stopped. He felt the metal of his badge suddenly burn clammy in his pocket. "Carter?" he whispered. "Gregory James Carter," the man said, enunciating carefully, as though tasting the words aloud. James pushed down the shock. You look, like anyone else." Gregory tilted his head. "I used to. Drove this same beat years ago before I lost everything." He paused. "I was the police commissioner." Nothing registered. James stared at him as though he'd seen a ghost. The man with cracked shoes, a stained coat. The leader of the entire police department once? The cold night air seemed to still. James's voice wavered. "How?" Gregory shook his head slowly. "It doesn't matter how. It matters what now. Imagine a man in his prime, crisp suit, polished shoes, commanding presence. Commissioner Carter stood in press conferences, launching initiatives, delivering speeches about accountability, justice, reform. He was a rarity, a black commissioner in a mostly white male hierarchy. A man who dreamed bigger for his community. He fought paperwork, inertia, and prejudice. For a time, people listened. But then came corruption allegations, misallocated funds. Some accused him of favoritism, undercover sting operations. He found himself answering questions to his own officers about impropriety. Rumors spread, financial missteps, conflict of interest, nepotism. Even the loyal looked away. He resigned under pressure. He sold his home and took a job at a credit union, but years later the pressure never let up. He lost confidence in the system. He lost both homes. His wife divorced him. His son cut contact, and one day he just disappeared, lost himself somewhere between boardrooms and shelters. Back in the alley, under the yellow bulb, Gregory Carter looked small in the shadows. His voice was soft but resolute. "When I walked away," he said, "I thought I was doing right. I thought the truth would clear my name." James stood there, the weight of his uniform feeling suddenly meaningless. But it didn't. Gregory shook his head. "No." He looked upward at the single lamp. "I had no one to save me." James swallowed. He pulled his badge out. You're still a cop. You're still me." Gregory almost smiled. "More than me, perhaps." James's tones grew urgent. "I can help. I'll look into what happened. I'll get the records back on the table. Interviews, appeal, whatever." Gregory's shoulders slumped. "You'd do that?" James nodded. "Yes. Not because you were a commissioner, but because you're human." They stood in silence. No footsteps, no cars. Just two men under a dying bulb on cracked concrete. And then James spoke again. "You deserve justice. Let me do something right." A few days later, James met with his sergeant, a seasoned black woman named Lisa Marshall. She listened, arms crossed at first, then unbending. Lisa dug through old archives, emails, resumes, pay stubs, commission memos. She found irregularities in the investigators' reports, different stories, handwritten amendments, unsealed documents scheduled for destruction. They stood in the sergeant's cramped office, printer humming. Lisa tapped a folder. Someone made sure this never reached the Civilian Oversight Board. It all stopped right here. James felt the gravity pull him forward. "Then we reopen it," he said firmly. "Open a departmental review, subpoena those files. If Gregory's name was dragged through mud, let's clean it." Lisa nodded. "I'll talk to Internal Affairs. Be ready. This won't be easy." Months passed. James worked nights digging through email chains, tracking down witnesses. He found one, a data analyst who spoke under anonymity, saying funds were diverted to a pet project of a rival official. She traced e-transfers to shell accounts. On a rainy April afternoon, James escorted Gregory, cleaned up, bathed for the first time in weeks, to headquarters. They walked past the same people who'd spat on them, whispering, "Commissioner? What is he doing here?" They stopped at the oversight board's hearing room. James rose, slamming the thick folder on the desk. "Commissioner Gregory James Carter was defamed. These are the documents that prove it. This department will vacate its findings. We will write the records." Gregory stood beside him. Again the whispers. "My name is Gregory James Carter," he began, his voice low, steady. "I served this city. I intend to serve again." The hearing room sat quiet. Cameras flashed. It was a reckoning, public, humiliating to those who'd brought him down, hopeful for those who believed in justice. James watched him. He saw the old fire, once bruised, now rekindling. It wasn't instant redemption. Legal machinery churned. Some resigned. Others were prosecuted. Thousands watched online as a decorated former commissioner reclaimed his legacy and as a solitary beat cop gave everything to help. Eventually, Gregory was cleared. He didn't take back his old office. Better, he said, was to rebuild it in service to communities left behind. He founded an outreach program, enlisting in the department's field division to mentor youth, partner with local charities, and reform policing from within. James remained at Eastwood Station. A few years older, more reflective. He and Gregory walked those same streets together, offering hot meals, opportunities, and listening ears. They held community forums. They stood at protests demanding fairness. They became a team bound by one profound lesson: never underestimate a homeless man. This story isn't just about a cop and a commissioner. It's about humanity, redemption, and accountability. It's a reminder that justice isn't just about enforcing laws, but about restoring dignity. It's about the voices we silence and the stories we ignore. James once laughed at a homeless man. He learned a truth bigger than his uniform. Every person matters. Gregory's fall from power exposed weaknesses in our system, but his revival shows what courage looks like. When we write off someone because of their circumstances, we might be missing the leaders among us. We might be missing a comrade, a mentor, a healer. So next time you pass someone on the street, remember Gregory. Look deeper than the exterior. Extend humanity first, because the person you undervalue today may be the one who repairs the world tomorrow.